people don't hate advertising. People hate bad experiences.
Yes, true.
and so if you're producing crap, then yeah, they're going to switch the station, or they're not going to watch you. But if you're producing something that engages them and entertains them and informs them, they're fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think for us, ear cons were really important at the beginning because they were like, okay, this is going to be something I want to hear.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. Here's the second part of my interview with Rudy Fernandez. How do you direct voice talent when you're in a session? Do you have a particular way of doing things, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to hear about it.
The most important thing when you're directing talent is to know what you are good at and not good at. And I've learned that over the years. So obviously the first part of that is selecting talent, and that's the casting specs have to be right.
Of course.
And knowing what to hear from a talent. And now we can get into that if you want.
Sure.
But when you're in the studio, I know that I tend to overdirect. And so I will start, with minimal amount as I can, and then inevitably I'll get to a point where I have overdirected this talent, and then I will step back.
Do you do the thing where you just ask the talent to redo, just start from scratch, do what you would want to do?
No.
I've had that often.
The best thing about directing talent, the number one thing I'll say is always set expectations with that person in the booth,
mm-hmm.
and let them know, hey, this is how I do it. And sometimes I overdirect, or I haven't decided whether it's going to be better if we read it this way or that way. So we're going to try both ways to see what sounds better. And they're usually cool with that. What they're not cool with is not knowing where your head is. And I've seen other people direct talent, and they're like, okay, let's read that again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What did you want changed?
Yeah. Different language. What?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think. I think always keeping that person involved in the process, knowing they are part of the creative process, is essential. Even if it's as simple as, hey, we're just listening to playback, because they're sitting in there, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You guys are talking in the booth. They can't hear you.
You guys could be ordering your lunch. We have no idea.
Yeah, but always saying, hey, we're just listening to playback. Hey, we're talking about the script or
mm-hmm.
something, and let them know. We're not talking about firing you, because that's usually, I think, what you're thinking is like, hey, oh, crap.
We're fragile little egos. We really are. Actually, along these lines, I wanted to ask you something about how you choose the talent in the first place, because mm-hmm. there's kind of a debate, I guess, amongst voiceover talent about whether or not they should have a lead-in to their audition. And I guess the thought that I have on this, and I've recently been coached about this as well, is that if you have a little tiny bit of a lead-in, then you are differentiating yourself from everyone else that they've heard.
What do you mean a lead-in? Like, this is Jody Krangle, blah, 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 blah?
No, more like, or I can't believe, or, just like a little something before the actual script starts, just to sort of make it sound a little different from everyone else they've been listening to 50 million times.
Huh. That may work. I can tell you that, in terms of, I'll separate into character and announcer reads.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking more announcer reads than
an announcer reads are two things. That one thing that's hard is that an announcer is the voice of a brand, mm-hmm. right? So it's very subjective, because inevitably someone's going to say that sounds like us, that doesn't sound like us. So that part you can't do anything about.
The lead-in has nothing to do with any of that either. Yeah.
But if you have a description of that announcer, then you can begin to, or at least look at the entire script or the brand itself, and figure out what kind of personality does this brand have, mm-hmm. and does it fit in with what I can deliver as a VO? A lot of times, I've seen people, especially with announcer read, thinking, they could just change the pitch of their voice and match this thing, and then it sounds unnatural. And as someone who's done this a while, it's like, if you're doing something that's forced, then you're not going to be able to read this several times, and the announcer has to be consistent.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it has to be something that fits in your natural range. So I for announcer reads, I would suggest, really, if it's something, I know you get a lot of auditions, but look at the brand itself, if it's a familiar one or not, and know, is my voice going to match who they are and who their audience is hoping they are?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So because they're really looking for the voice of the brand. So in terms of, or maybe I think as a tactic to get somebody to go, okay, this one.
And especially if it fits the brand,
Sure.
But along those lines, actually, because we're talking here, specifically, this podcast is called audio branding.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about audio branding and figuring out what tone of voice or what type of voice would be good for a particular client, do you guys actually, I'm assuming that you think about that. Does your client think about that? Like, are they paying attention to that kind of thing?
I think they don't, but it's up to me or the me in whoever my role to explain that beforehand, to say to explain that this voice delivers this quality, which ties into this aspect of your brand. This is a fun-loving direct, a fun-loving sort of neighbor, or this is a very smart professor, or this is whatever the character is that delivers your brand. You have to sort of explain what you're going for and make sure that they say, "Oh yeah, I get that."
Yeah, because I always wonder, because I know companies pay a lot of attention to how they look and not so much attention to how they sound.
Yeah, what ends up happening is if you don't prep your client for that, you end up getting what you hear so much of, which is just someone who just sounds like a disembodied voice. You can't tell they're just delivering copy points. And so it doesn't, in my opinion, connect with the audience. It doesn't reach out from the radio or and say, "Hey, listen to me, because I'm talking exactly to your need."
Yeah, a very good point. So along these lines, do you have any case studies of things that you could talk about where the sound played such an important part? I mean, in radio, it always does, but you've crafted entire environments with your radio spots, right? So,
yeah. So I know I can point to direct results from almost exclusive radio campaigns. Now, I'm not recommending an exclusive radio campaign, especially nowadays. It's you need to have multiple touch points with your audiences.
Sure. And
radio is a strong one. Because I said in that blog, so far every car has a radio in it, so it's still I think 92 to 90%, 93% of the American public listens to the radio every week.
Well, even Sirius XM, they're starting to put advertising on theirs as well, and I know Pandora is a part of the Sirius XM network now, and I know they advertise.
Yeah. So we have seen that with one of our clients is the University of Alabama College of Continuing Studies, and that we're trying to get people to go back to school, and we're trying to get them to choose to do that through the University of Alabama, and we've seen tremendous results from that. And again, I think it's because it's a very personal thing to say, okay, I've never gotten my degree and I don't feel right about that, or I feel very close to this university and I wish I were part of it. And I think audio is a very, like I said, very intimate medium. It's okay. You're talking to me. When I say, "Hey, you haven't earned your degree," or "You love the University of Alabama," like, oh, they're talking to me.
Yeah, it's one-on-one. Yeah, definitely.
And so for those sorts of things, we found tremendous success where it's a very personal thing. With something like, let's say, getting people to ride transit or that sort of thing, we could be a little bit more, a little funnier, a little looser with that, and that's yielded some good things because they're in their car and they're probably frustrated. So we want to we don't want to make them angrier. We just want to give them some release and go, "Ha, that's funny."
Yeah, humor is a good way to do that. Definitely, get them to pay attention.
Yeah, and we yielded some great results with that as well. So,
Well, moving into what you called ear cons, I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
they've been pretty popular in the past too. Do you guys do that kind of thing at
Oh yeah,
your studio?
yeah.
Yeah.
We had one. We had an intro and outro aircon when we first started with back when we did like the one you had talked about, the clean air campaign. It was a hit of music, but we've created one. We created one for our show. We've created for different clients that sort of, let people know what's coming. And the reason, and this is sort of cocky, but I want to think the things that we create, I think, are better than everything else you hear. And so what I heard anecdotally was we always knew it was going to be funny when we heard that thing, for a couple of our clients, or we always knew. So we've created them for clients before because we knew we were creating something different and something they're not used to hearing. And I think it let people know, hey, I want to hear this. People say, you've heard people say they don't like advertising. People don't hate advertising. People hate bad experiences.
Yes, true.
And so if you're producing crap, then yeah, they're going to switch the station, or they're not going to watch you. But if you're producing something that engages them and entertains them and informs them, they're fine with that. So I think for us, the ear cons were really important at the beginning because they were like, okay, this is going to be something I want to hear. So it served us really well. And for others, it also serves as a sort of like an audio logo. We've heard many of those.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I know who that is without even hearing anything.
Yeah, it's consistency. And the wonderful thing about these sorts of things, sonic branding, which I guess is what they call it now,
Yes.
is that it's universal. So it doesn't
Sure.
matter where in the world you're hearing it. If it's consistent and that's the sound you're hearing every time that product is mentioned or service or whatever it is, then people know who you are just by hearing that little sonic bit.
And it brings everything together. So if you hear that, like the Taco Bell bells, you now remember everything you know about Taco Bell. And if you are a regular customer, it's like, okay, you may remember, I like their tacos. I may want to get some food. But it brings all the things you already know back into mind just with one quick sound.
I couldn't agree more. So can you talk a little about what you're working on now? What's the latest for you folks?
Besides our podcast.
Well, yeah, I know that's continuing, but yeah.
We are, it's funny that you say that. We are, as you know, we're recording this now in the heart of the coronavirus shutdown. And we have a client that is a grocery store, and they are needing some help right now. And we're also getting some requests for quick turnaround, sort of informational pieces on the virus.
Sure.
And it's an odd time. No one knows what the other side of this is going to look like. So I
guess it depends on how long it lasts, right?
Yeah. So I also don't know.
I don't think any of us do. Yeah. Strange times.
So again, right now, that is what's keeping us busy, and we're also, a lot of, like everyone else, a lot of the things we were working on have been put on hold. But it's funny, we are working on 2 brand launches right now that are still proceeding because we were at a phase where we were developing elements for their launch, and they're still going to launch. They just don't know when, so they'll still need those elements when they launch. So we're working on that as well.
What kind of industries are they in?
Utilities.
Oh, okay.
So
utilities are always going to be needed. So
yeah. So we sort of, like I said, several of our clients, they're sort of rightfully so on hold and saying, let's see where this goes. But some of our clients, they know it's, they're still going to, nothing has changed in their industry. So.
Well, hopefully this all ends fairly shortly. I guess we'll see.
We'll see. My one daughter is a voiceover as well. So we poisoned her.
Well, I'm a little biased, so I think that's awesome.
Yeah, she's been in a booth her whole life. So she lives out in LA, and she has had a lot of jobs canceled this month because no one's right now they're on hold with a lot of stuff.
Well, a lot of the studios are actually closing because they don't want anyone to physically come in.
Yeah.
And so people who didn't get themselves a decent home studio are floundering now,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. But yeah, I guess everyone's kind of learning their lesson. Be able to do this remotely.
Yeah. No, for her, it was a group session. She had a bunch of, because she's doing a lot of, she plays, I don't know if you want this on the show, but she plays younger, and she does a lot of animation kid shows.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So ensemble casts wouldn't be called in to work together. Yeah.
Yeah. So group sessions have been canceled, and then another one was for like an ice cream retailer, which they're not going to have anybody come out for ice cream right now. But how are you doing? How's your voiceover world going?
So far, so good. I'm actually really lucky in that the ones that would be slowing down for me would be the tourism ones.
Yeah.
And I have a little less of that right now, but there's still lots of other things going on. So it's, banks are still open. People need ads of varying degrees depending on what they're selling and what they're offering.
Yeah.
And people still need these services.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and again, we're all kind of wondering how long this is going to last. So
Yeah.
if you stop advertising, then when this is done, you're going to find yourself with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. No one really knows what it looks like on the other side or when that other side is going to be here. But I'm very concerned about the health aspect and the people who are losing their jobs.
Of course. Yeah.
But, it'll be, as a society, we'll learn from this and figure out what to do, moving forward.
Yeah. There's actually an interesting aspect of this, and I'm not taking this lightly by any means or, lessening the importance of the health aspect or any of that. But it does force us to take a step back and take a breath, I mean, we've been going breakneck speed on everything for years now.
Yeah.
And this is just forcing us all to take a step back and just be for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's important for the whole human race.
Yeah. I say that, but I'm actually going, hey, we've been meaning to redo our website.
Well, but these are things that you could do in off time. You know what I mean? Like they're not things that you're rushed to do right this second. And a lot of us have spent years now being rushed to do everything right in that second.
Yeah.
And so having the moment to sort of step back and experience life instead of being forced to go through life.
Yeah.
Is maybe, I think we might look back on this time period and say, I think we kind of changed when we went through that.
Yeah. I was talking to someone about this. There's nothing in my lifetime, surely in nobody's lifetime, to compare this to directly.
There really isn't. Yeah.
There was the economic, downfall in 2008. There was 9/11, but neither of those things are like this at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, people keep relating it to the 1918 influenza pandemic.
Yeah. I missed that. I wasn't there.
Well, yeah, I wasn't around either. But looking at the history of it all, I mean, who knows? I don't know how. Obviously, our technology is a lot different than it was back then.
Yeah.
And I mean, thank God for Google Hangouts and Zoom and Squadcast and, any FaceTime and all of these things that we're able to actually still connect with people without being that close.
Sure.
So that you can have your social distancing without actually being isolated.
Yeah. I have 2 meetings today.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. Yeah. It's still going on.
Yeah. From this very chair.
Yeah. Well, I should probably let you get to those meetings. Can you mention maybe some of the things, some of the ways that people can get in touch with you?
Sure.
I'll put those in the show notes as well, so they'll be able to get them.
Sure. Well, our website, if you'd like to, which will be changing soon if I have the time.
Yeah.
But if you want to check out some of our work, you can go to creativeouthouse.com. And we have you can look at our work there and brand launches and different categories. There's also, if you go /podcast, you can see our podcasts and blogs there. And Marketing Upheaval is the name of the podcast.
Are you on social media anywhere?
Oh, yes. You could find me, Rudy Fernandez, on LinkedIn. You can find Creative Outhouse on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook. Our Instagram page is woefully pathetic, but maybe someday we'll pay attention to that now. Maybe, who knows?
Well, yeah, maybe now is the time.
Yeah. But those other ones we got covered, so check those out.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jody. It was great talking to you.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, please take a moment to give the podcast a review. It's greatly appreciated and super helpful. Until next time.